Very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesday morning's OTB AM. We're here with you all the way until about 9:30 this morning. If you want to just consume us as a radio product in the background of your daily life, then just click on offtheball.com. There's a listen live function. You can minimise it and go about your business, and you won't even have to look at our ugly mugs. Oh, and how are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm pretty excited about this. Big football match tonight. Lots of tension in the air. What else do you want from your international football team? But a bit of tension, everything on the line, do or die, 2 games into a brand new qualifying campaign.
And a load of tennis balls on the pitch, hopefully, all going well.
Yeah, I thought Kieran Cunningham had a good idea. Why not slithers instead of tennis balls?
It's a very good shout. Very, very good shout. Looking at previous Ireland-Georgia results, I was going back yesterday to see the other times that Georgia had beaten us or the other times that they've drawn against us. It turns out that time in Tbilisi in the World Cup qualifying campaign was the first time we didn't get 3 points against Georgia.
Yeah.
Have our struggles against Georgia been massively overplayed?
No, all the games are terrible. We require a moment of genius or a fluke to beat them, and we've just been consistently lucky and fluky. And then we had the benefit of not having to go to Tbilisi that time because Russia invaded them or something?
More than likely Russia. I can't quite remember, but I do remember that game was played elsewhere. Yeah, but like I did think that we were surely beaten by them at one stage, or at least we suffered a couple of draws over there, but really it's only happened once. Now granted, that was the most recent occasion we've gone there, so it would suggest something about where we're at the moment, but also it would suggest something where Georgia are at the moment.
We still made the playoffs though, right? After that, I'm not mistaken.
But the point was that had we won that game and had we picked up one other win, we might have toppled Serbia at the top of that qualifying campaign. So it was something like a 4-point difference.
The auntie had balls, she'd be me uncle.
Well, it's true, but ultimately you can make if me auntie had balls argument about a lot of Irish things, and the presence of balls actually isn't that far away sometimes when it comes to the Ireland football team, and it is frustrating, and that is a good thing that those frustrations are actually in the relative recent past. It's not like this is some sort of Mick McCarthy first era team we're talking about. This is a relatively recent Ireland team that managed to put together a run of results in a qualifying campaign that almost got us automatically qualified for the World Cup. Now, crucially, we didn't, and in the playoff we fell flat in our face, and that is more recent than that qualifying campaign. But I'm just trying to be positive here this morning. I've had enough of this negativity, and I am blaming it on the EasyJet planes and the gale force winds in Gibraltar last weekend for why Ireland looks so flat. Okay.
Certainly Gary Breen was of the view last night as well when he was on the radio talking to the lads, saying that he didn't think we should be throwing out the experiment of having Coleman and Doherty playing in the same, but it seems like maybe McCarthy has ruled it out from yesterday's press conference. He was even more definitive that it just didn't work. I'm like, well, I mean, come on now, if you can say that didn't work, we can say your team played pretty bad football. So if you're making the judgment that it was okay to throw that out, then the conditions weren't so bad that we can't throw out how bad the rest of the performance was. Fair? He's making these judgments on the basis of what he's seen. Everybody else is like, oh no, it's okay. It was windy, lads. You know, you've never played in wind before, and you certainly never played in AstroTurf before, even though it's like a home game for us. Mm-hmm. It fits us like a glove.
The Matt Doherty thing always seemed to me like a bit of a football manager move, where it's like, let's get all our best players in the pitch, and maybe the AI is telling me that this guy isn't particularly suited to this position, but he will increase the overall attributes of our team. So I can see where Mick McCarthy is coming from, where he's like, okay, in theory it may seem like a good idea, but in practice, for an actual real-life human football team, it may not actually be the best idea. I do think it is worth an extra shot, though. The counter-argument against it, once again, though, is the fact that it was a windy day, and if Ireland tried to play a little bit of ball, which they did at rare occasions on Saturday, trying to keep the ball down, they would have had to do that on the right-hand side of the pitch. It's not like you're going high to Matt Doherty or he's involved in any sort of play that would be impacted by the wind. Like, if Ireland try to play ball, if they keep the ball down, and if they play a game that is unaffected by winds tonight, it's going to have a similar enough result to how it went on Saturday, you'd think. But I just think he's just far too good a player to consider dropping at this point.
Okay. In the meantime, the crisis around the FAI shows no signs of abating, and because of the match tonight, there's plenty of excuses for the papers to continue writing about it. There does seem like this weight is becoming a deluge of criticism of the plans that the FAI have outlined, of the weird, speedy timing, that this perfectly carefully thought out, orchestrated evolution of the new FAI, and then it's delivered like with rapier-like wit just before the Sunday papers come out in case there's anything in it. And then there's nothing really in the Sunday papers that would force your hand to the point where you have to do this. So Niall Quinn was obviously on Virgin Media last night saying that, giving us all the new word, the ghillie. The only person who would take this job would be a ghillie. Somebody had to look it up. Something to do with somebody who pulls a circus. Did you get that?
I didn't. I thought for a moment he was referring to like a ghillie suit or something that you might wear in the army. That the only person who might actually take the job is somebody who's wearing a heavy camouflage, but clearly that's not the case. A ghillie is somebody who works in the circus, obviously.
Well, I mean, there is obviously a ghillie from Game of Thrones.
There is that. Salmon ghillie of ghillie fame.
There you go. A man or boy who tends someone on a hunting or fishing expedition. A type of shoe with laces along the instep and no tongue used especially for Scottish country dancing. Either way, it's not really, you don't want to be the man or boy who attends someone on a hunting or fishing expedition, do you? You're the one who has to go and get the dead... Do you get the dead dog? You get the dead bird out of the dog's mouth? Is that your job?
Yeah, you're
trying not to get shot, basically.
You're a hunting assistant.
And if you do get shot, no one really cares. You're just the ghillie. It's like, oh, I blew the ghillie's head off. Give you some whiskey. That's how that works.
The thing is, everybody feels sorry for the ghillie, and it would be a rather honourable way to go, wouldn't it? Getting your head shot off. If you're going to go in some way, at least allow it to be dramatic like that, rather than...
By an executive vice president?
Well, yeah, no clandestine act would result in your fate. It would actually just be kind of a full-blown sort of end to your career or whatever it may be. So Niall Quinn clearly ruling himself out of that position. Really impressive, actually, or like really strong stuff from him last night on Virgin Media, just saying basically that it's a chief executive role that's more than likely not going to be a chief executive role.
Yeah, and he's not buying it, and nobody else is buying it at the moment. So we'll come back to this a little bit later on. We do want to talk about all the other stuff that's happened last night. England were pretty good against Montenegro, winning 4-1, coming from 1-0 down. A game completely overshadowed by racist chanting that the English players had to put up with. England do look very good. We'll talk about the racist chanting a little bit later on. We'll bring you some of the leadership that's being shown by Raheem Sterling, who it turns out is becoming one of the most important footballers in world football, both on and off the field. Like, not entirely expected, I would say, that Sterling's career was going to flower in the way that it did, but is he England's best player?
Yes.
By a mile?
Not by a mile. On current form, he certainly is. He's overtaken Harry Kane for that mantle at the moment. And he's just, like, you would actually consider Raheem Sterling as a very big contender for PFA Footballer of the Year at this point.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing 12 months for him, really, in terms of the way he's been spoken about, the criticism he's got, and the way he tackled that head on a few months ago. And now the way, I guess, the Montenegrin fans targeted the English players yesterday in a fairly disgusting manner, and Raheem Sterling once again steps up to the plate, because let's not forget, there actually isn't any duty on Raheem Sterling to step up here and say what he says or speak out about any of this stuff. It's clearly something that matters to him, and it matters to anybody who's a victim of this sort of stuff, but it's easier for us to say here in this studio that they should be standing up when they go to a place like Montenegro to further some of the stuff they hear, but it's a different story actually going out there in front of a microphone and saying it.
Yeah, and in fairness, Gareth Southgate also stood up and talked about it too. So you would hope that the leadership they're showing will be followed by leadership from UEFA. We'll bring you the audio from that a little bit later on. Coming up next is we're going to talk about the sports page. We'll bring you them. The racism in football, we'll talk about that at 8 o'clock. GAA Tactics, Aidan O'Rourke is going to join us. Owen was throwing some shade his direction last week for a column that Aidan O'Rourke wrote about the lack of hunger that the Kerry defenders and Kerry team have generally for the donkey work in defence. And that's a fair enough assessment. You're going to ambush Aidan O'Rourke in about 10 minutes' time. Is that what's going to happen?
Well, like, it's not an ambush if you've actually called him up and say, hey, and do you want to take a call in 24 hours and prepare everything you want to say? I just disagree heavily with the column he wrote. I'm sure he'll agree heavily with what he wrote, and he'll stand by it, and that's just the way disagreements work. Yeah,
also that, we're going to talk about the John Delaney years and his rise to power around about 8:25. Sports News with Darren coming around 8:45. Ireland against Georgia at 8:55, and Will Fleury is going to talk to us mixed martial arts around about 9:10 this morning. Now, let's start with the newspaper headlines this morning. Unusually enough, I'm going to start with The Sun. John sorted World Cup final for Dáil Quiz TD. This is a Fianna Fáil TD who paid €1,806 for the privilege to go to the World Cup final. And his name is Kevin O'Keefe, and he's also a member of the Oireachtas committee that is going to be asking John Delaney all these questions coming up. So I just want to bring you this bit. Speaking to the Irish Sun, O'Keefe said he didn't see a problem with getting tickets from Delaney and asked, how else would I get a World Cup final ticket? It's a very good question. How else would a TD get a World Cup final ticket other than from the leader of the FAI, who it's your job as a member of the sports committee to hold to account? I don't blame John Delaney for giving you tickets, by the way. I absolutely don't, because when a TD asks you for tickets and you're in a position to somehow exert some influence, of course you're going to have to do that. But now you've got to pay him back. That's what has to happen there, and you've got to pay him back by giving him an easy ride at the Oireachtas committee, because that's how these things work, buddy. I just want to bring you this one as well, because it may well be the tab of the morning/year. Everybody knows A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez?
Yeah, I did notice that when he held it up there.
He's the highest paid baseball player of all time at one point for the Yankees. I think he had a $250 million contract at one stage. Married to J-Lo. And the headline, and it's a Showbiz exclusive on the front of the Irish Sun, J-Lo's fella showed me his A-Rod. Tab of the morning to you. We can come back to the rest of the...
Are you just going to leave that hanging there?
I mean, I think everybody knows what the implication is, isn't it?
Well, I thought you'd actually go into some detail in the story. I must catch up on that later on now.
Okay. Owen demands some prurient details all the way to page 23, which is LeBron James and I'm not going to link LeBron, David Beckham and
Michael Jordan
to this. A Playboy playmate says love rat Alex Rodriguez begged her for a threesome just weeks before he proposed to J-Lo. Glamour model Zoe Gregory alleges the baseball star bombarded her with sleazy texts and sent a picture of his manhood. That's his A-Rod. Sorry, the back page of the Sun this morning. A ballsy move. There's a theme developing there. Mick rallies fans to serve up ace atmosphere. They also have a picture of him with a tennis racket on the front. You cannot be serious. Good man Mick McCarthy playing this like a seasoned media dream. He's just kind of laughing it all off. I mean, it is the most goo-boo week that Mick McCarthy has had since 2002, and that's saying quite a lot. Like, it really is. He must be looking at this going... in fairness, the joke about the needing a large door for the nameplate for the executive vice president and the tennis racket, it's like, whatever you think about him as a manager, he's a genius when it comes to the press. There he is, sitting beside already. Look, there's a look of love from John Delaney there. We've got a picture of the two of them when the announcement was made. You go next.
Yeah, the Irish Daily Mail has "It's time to go." Quinn calls on Delaney to quit FAI's charade, and you've also got a picture there of Raheem Sterling listening to the crowd. 5-star England, says the headline, as England win 5-1. You've also got this story here: Fogarty to join Farrell on Ireland's coaching ticket. So John Fogarty is set to link up with Andy Farrell's new look Ireland backroom team as scrum coach next season. That is, of course, when Farrell succeeds Joe Schmidt as Ireland head coach.
It's 7:58 this morning. You're watching off OTB AM on whatever platform or listening to us on offtheball.com. The back page of the Irish Independent this morning. Quinn called for change as crisis overshadows game. Ex-Irish striker wants Delaney exit as McCarthy focuses on Georgia. This is the first time that former players have come together and started, and I'm not even suggesting that they're acting in concert, but they've come out at the same time and said that they want a change and John Delaney to go. And given that John Delaney has already said that he's going a little bit, then it does feel like the pressure is not abating in any way. Canning in the clear for Galway. This is great news from Galway. Apparently, what looked like a serious injury has ended up being a groin injury that Joe Canning is actually going to be okay, even though he was stretched off the weekend. Leo Cullen confirming that Ireland want Fogarty as scrum coach. So Greg Feek is leaving to take up a job in Japan after the World Cup. Obviously, Feek has been synonymous with Ireland's success in the scrum in recent seasons, and it turns out that Leinster are looking at John Fogarty Ireland are looking at Leinster's John Fogarty to take that role up next.
The back page of the Herald this morning leads with "Licence to score. That's how my team will play," says Mick McCarthy. Delaney's FAI switch is a charade, says Niall Quinn, and Jeff Hendrick is quoted on the back page saying, "I want goals." He's aiming to step up tonight against Georgia.
The front of it's almost the same picture. Republic of Ireland versus Georgia. It's utopia playing well and winning. I mean, what are you fools? What? Imagine wanting to play well and win. Which, if I just want to say, if Martin O'Neill had said that, I mean, Trapattoni would have said, "You're crap. You'll be lucky to win anything." Martin O'Neill would have been like, I mean, come on. He's plain speaking. Mick McCarthy is like, no, that can't happen. And everyone goes, oh, okay, fair enough, we understand it now. Mike Quirk, always interesting. Time to silence the PlayStation parenting overshadowing underage games. And then there's loads of other stories, including the one that Ron O'Gara was on Off the Ball last night talking about. We'll play some of that a little bit later on. I just want to show you this as well. Gold Cup hero photo laps up attention at homecoming parade. Alboon photo in Loughlin Bridge in Carlow. Cheltenham Gold Cup winner Alboon photo paraded through Loughlin Bridge last night with the trainer Willie Mullins and the jockey Paul Townend, which is pretty special. Small towns like Loughlin Bridge becoming the epicentre of world racing for just a short little period of time kind of is the magic of something like the Gold Cup. And obviously the Mullins Yard is a massive, stratospherically brilliant and important yard, but at the same time the people of Loughlin Bridge got to share in their success.
The back page of the Irish Daily Star this morning leads with "Your time is up." Quinn calls Delaney move a charade. Mick McCarthy meanwhile is saying we'll serve up a treat tonight, and Davy Fitz has got his ban slashed. So he was initially banned for 12 weeks, labelled absolutely ludicrous by a leading Wexford official, and the suspension has now been reduced to 4 weeks. So he was hit with the proposed sanction after comments to Colin McAllister, the referee from Cork, after his handling of the Wexford League quarter-final defeat by Galway 10 days ago. So Wexford went to the hearing and they were successful. So Davy will be back in time for the championship.
Yeah, so Leo Cullen there again on the back page confirming that John Fogarty is a man in demand. The picture of James McLean looking unaffected by the Delaney controversy as he prepares for the visit of Georgia to the Aviva tonight. And then Delaney has to leave now, insists Hand. So Owen Hand also on Off the Ball last night, but Gary Doyle seems to have spoken to himself, and he's talking about we need a thorough assessment of how the FAI is run. I believe John Delaney should go, but I also believe strongly in a process. So, that's now several former managers, former players coming out and saying that they want the Delaney era to end.
Your time is up, John, reads the back of the Mirror. Quinn says, I won't be the new chief as long as Delaney is lurking in the shadows. Forget FAI mess and get behind us, says Jeff Hendrick. FIFA give Blues hope to overturn transfer ban, then is another story here. So FIFA confirmed yesterday that an appeal hearing against the Blues 2-window transfer ban will be heard. And then race hate mob can't stop Ross. England 5, Montenegro 1. That's John Cross's story there from that particular match.
Surname ready to clash with Altior at Aintree, says Cobden. I presume I'm pronouncing surname right. I may not be. If I'm not, apologies for that. And then there's a picture of Alboon photo and the Gold Cup itself at the party in Loughlin Bridge in Carlow. And then back page, trouble in Dublin. Ooh, so the Racing Post thinks that we could be in for a difficult night tonight. There's been a suggestion Irish supporters could hold tennis ball protests at the Aviva Stadium tonight about issues involving the FAI. And those fans may also be unhappy with events on the pitch after Georgia have left Dublin. Screw you, Mark Langdon, for telling us the truth about what might happen on the pitch tonight.
The back page of The Guardian goes with perfect 10. Barkley at the double in another 5-star win for Southgate's side. And you've also got the headline there for Mick McCarthy. Mick McCarthy's plea, Ireland fans urged to avoid Delaney protests tonight in Dublin. Yeah, and so a story there from last night, you might have missed it. Serbia and Portugal drew 1-1. England beat Montenegro 5-1, and obviously the match completely overshadowed by the racism. McIlroy could regain top spot of Stars Align at match play. And then a picture of Joey Carberry. Van Graan expects Carberry and Murray to play key roles. So apparently Joey Carberry still has to prove his full fitness ahead of the weekend, but it looks like he will actually be able to play in the game against Edinburgh. And that is, obviously, there's match reports and match previews from the Ireland-Georgia game. Not that much on Delaney in the Irish Times that I can see this morning, certainly in the issue that we have. So no doubt there'll be more of that coming your way in just a little while. So there's the English papers, Daily Telegraph. Sterling silences the racists, and then comes out afterwards and explains exactly what happened in an excellent, meaningful contribution to what's going on. And as Owen said earlier on, we can't demand this of the players. I mean, you might be able to demand it from his teammates who aren't actually suffering the racist abuse to come out and stand up for him. Maybe they just weren't given the opportunity to. Certainly Gareth Southgate did a great job of it anyway afterwards. So, but they're calling for meaningful sanctions on teams like Montenegro where this happens, because it's pretty clear what it is. And we keep hearing this, it's a cultural thing. That's not good enough. If sport is going to be an agent for change, then they've got to step in and say, okay, you're going to play all your games behind closed doors until you stop this racist chanting. And how important, I wonder, is it from an FA perspective that they keep someone like Gareth Southgate in the job? Because given the social role inadvertently that the manager of the England team has and all the players have, and the job that Gareth Southgate is doing on this front, which is an exceptional job, I think it adds to the appeal of him as England manager. Of course, results are always going to be the one and only thing and the most important thing. But I'm sure the FA is looking at this appointment and is thinking to themselves,
we got a bit lucky.
We've done a pretty good job here.
We owe that pint of wine a pint.
Well, that's the thing. You don't want to say that Sam Allardyce wouldn't step up and say the sort of thing after a game in Montenegro, but certainly it seems that Southgate is much more of a likely candidate to do so on a regular basis.
The quality of football they're playing, the way the whole country is unified behind them, the fact that Raheem Sterling has been given the confidence to become the leader that he has, I think part of that is all down to the management talent and ability of Southgate. Let's hear from some of the key characters. After they fell 1-0 down, England were brilliant in the aftermath, and as we mentioned, the game overshadowed by racist chants directed at some of their players. Here's what Raheem Sterling had to say after the game.
You know, I just wanted to show them that you're going to need more than that to upset us and stop us. Because, you know, what can I do? We know, all of us know what skin colour we are. So I don't know what the big issue is. It's not like you're telling us anything new. It's 2019 now. I keep saying it, and it's just it's a shame to see this keep going on. And it's just, you know, we can only bring awareness to the situation and light to the situation. It's now time for the people that are in charge to put a real stamp on it. Because, you know, you can find someone, but what's that going to do? You've got to make it a bit more harder. You've got to punish either the whole fans that can't come to games. You've got to do something that's going to really make them think twice, because, you know, if their team can't play with fans, it's going to be difficult for them. So it's got to be something that you've got to make them think twice about. It's not just young black men, it's young kids growing up in, you know, diverse cities. It's not just black kids that I want to reach out to. It's you know, England, we've got a diverse country, and it's 2019, as I keep saying, and there's a lot of different faces in our country. It's just bringing awareness to let people know that this is new time, that's different.
Yeah, so Sterling actually said there that he hadn't heard them, but they were brought to his attention by one of his teammates. Another of his teammates who was very close to it was Callum Hudson-Odoi, the Chelsea teenager who was handed his first international start last night, who was obviously much closer to the racist chanting. Have a look.
Did you hear them? How does it impact you, and how does it make you feel about your teammates in 2019 that this is here on the top level of the game?
Yeah, I don't think discrimination should be anywhere, you know. I think, as I said, we're equal. We have to play a fair game and enjoy the moment, but when you're hearing stuff like that from the fans, it's not right, it's unacceptable. And hopefully UEFA deal with it properly, because obviously when I went over there, me and Rosie heard it. They were saying, ooh, monkey stuff. So there's stuff that we have to just keep our heads, keep a strong mentality. And obviously, hopefully Rosie's okay as well. And if anything, we'll have a chat and discuss what happened. But he's got a strong mentality, he's a strong guy. So I think everything will be good. Hopefully UEFA do it.
And then here is Gareth Southgate also in the aftermath. Remember, his team has just won 5-1. They've racked up 10 goals, 6 points. They've basically secured qualification after 2 games with 2 brilliant performances. Everybody knows now they're going to be the powerhouse in the group. But the thing that he wants to talk about and the thing that he's most focused on is the racism. So fair play to him. Have a listen.
It's difficult for me to know what the sanctions should be. It's not acceptable that it's still in the game, but it's not acceptable that it's still in society. And we're away from home. But I've said before, we're not clear of this issue at home, and we've got to make sure our players are supported. We've got to put our own house in order at home, and we'll push for the right sanctions here.
Gareth Southgate giving us his thoughts on the racist chanting that happened at the end of the 5-1 win for England last night. OK, so we're going to talk about John Delaney a little bit later on. We'll bring you the sports news from Darren Cleary. We're going to talk about Will Fleury and his MMA career a little bit later on too. If you want to get in touch with us, you can just use the hashtag OTBAM, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. youtube.com/offtheball is the address that you can go to there. The best way to watch us or to listen to us every morning is just get on to offtheball.com. It's 8:10. Let's move on, because we want to talk GAA now, and I'm delighted to say Aidan O'Rourke is with us on the line this morning. And good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning.
There's a couple of things that we wanted to talk to you about. Most notably was the suggestion that you'd made in a column last week about the Kerry football team, and just a little kink that you'd seen that maybe separates them from the best team in the country at the moment, which is obviously Dublin, has been over the last couple of years. Is there a weakness in Kerry's willingness to defend collectively at the minute?
You're quoting me back directly there. I suppose analysing the Mayo game in round 6, I suppose it would go as far as to say it was alarming probably to watch how poor they were in the tackle, I thought. I didn't see them at the weekend past, or the highlights. And Mayo probably were their worst nightmare in terms of Mayo tend to run the ball, so most of the majority of their attack entry is carrying the ball. And it's just early in the game when Kerry were trying to press them high up, trying to hem them into their own half. Mayo found it very easy to slip the tackle and beat them in one-on-one situations. And I think come the summer, that's going to be a very, very important aspect of how Kerry are going to defend if they're going to take teams like Dublin on. Now, obviously, it's early in the year, and I'm sure this will be something to be looking closely at. But it's a very, very important facet of how you want to play.
Yeah, it's early in the year, Aidan, but they have conceded the joint least amount of anybody in Division 1 so far.
They have indeed, yeah. So there's 3 teams in around the same, and they've certainly made improvements from last year. I think you need to look at it from a sort of a wider perspective in terms of what teams in Division 1 are trying to achieve. So it's not as simple as looking at we've conceded X and you've conceded Y, therefore we're better. Defensively, so if you take Mayo, for example, which is the game that we were looking at in this instance, Mayo obviously are looking at different personnel. They're shuffling from week to week to have a look at who can come in and do a job. That's obviously their focus. Kerry have a different focus. They're obviously trying to build confidence, new management. They're certainly having a look at younger players. But for me, where they were defensively, in a real test at home, in the second part of the league, where teams are starting to come to where their ability levels are, I thought they were disappointing in defence.
Can I just talk to you a little bit about so other teams who do this well? I mentioned the Dubs. One of the things that Pat Gilroy was lauded for was after they conceded the 4 or 5 goals against Meath that time, that the forwards had to learn how to defend and had to become as good, if not better, tacklers than the defence, and that there was a collective mind shift away from that. Because people kind of forget that the Dublin team that wins the All-Ireland under Pat Gilroy are an ultra-defensive team, like really, really defensive team. They just also happen to have Bernard Brogan and Diarmuid Connolly on that side playing, and Alan Brogan playing some of the best football of their lives. So they were gifted with these genius forwards, but all of those were also tasked with being the front line of defence. Is that something that's missing from this Kerry team, or is this?
I know what Aidan's going to say here. I say he's not, because you actually cite Sean O'Shea as one of the best tacklers in that Mayo game, Aidan.
He is. He's maybe the best tackler on the Kerry team. And if you go back through the years and look at teams who have done well and won All Irelands, etc., the best tacklers, but more often than not, are in the forward line. And that doesn't necessarily mean strip the ball and kick it over the bar. It means the ability to hold a defence up, coming out, turn them back, make 3 or 4 extra passes before they can break. I don't want to get into the transition language, but if a forward line can interfere with that and occasionally turn the ball over, then that's brilliant. And Sean O'Shea has shown himself to be very, very adept at that. If you look at the likes of Michael Murphy, now Michael Murphy's a big, strong fella, but if he gets in the way of a defence breaking out, they will do very well to get past him. And he's maybe not technically the most brilliant tackler, but he knows how to get his body in the way. He knows how to half foul. He knows how to slow opponents down and fall on top of the man he's fouled, so the free isn't taken just as quickly. Those are little learning points that I think maybe just are lacking a wee bit at the minute with Kerry, but predominantly the forward line is very young, and I'm sure those are areas that they're looking at. But collectively, you need to have that mindset around, it's not just about how well you tackle. You need to have that collective mindset around how do we interfere with what the opposition are trying to do.
But like for a team that doesn't have a collective will to defend, that have a lack of mental toughness, that don't have the technical capacity to make effective tackles in one-on-one situations, and that got cleaned out, absolutely cleaned out in midfield, conceding 110 isn't that bad, Aidan?
Well, it was bad enough to lose the game, which is the end game ultimately. And you must remember, that's not a Mayo team that's firing on all cylinders with all the quality players on the pitch. So absolutely, I take your point that it's not devastating, and I'm not making the point that Kerry can throw their hat at it for the year now.
You said they've wasted the league. There's a chance they may have wasted the league.
It was their first litmus test, really, of the year. At home, under pressure in the second half with the breeze, and I didn't think they went about their business in the right way.
But like the initial paragraph, you said that Kerry may have wasted the league. Is that something you'd stand by?
Well, I would. Obviously, when you're setting out, looking at the league in terms of goals and where you want to be at the end of it, you need to have the perspective of, okay, we know what we have offensively, we know what the individual quality is, but the glaring thing for me outside of the league for Kerry was they didn't have the individual defensive capabilities that some of the other teams have. So if you think of the other best teams in the country, perceived, so you can name the best 2 or 3 individual defenders, so you know who is going to mark Conor McManus, who is going to mark Paul Mannion in a particular game. But you look at Kerry, you're not sure who the best markers are. You don't know who the best individual defenders are. And I felt that the priority for the league was to work out how they could address that. And if they don't have the individual quality, then you have to address it collectively.
In fairness, Aidan, there's part of that I'd agree with, but just to continue with the point that I disagree with here is the idea of the collective will of Kerry to actually defend here in the context of this Mayo game. Now, you'd know a lot more about statistics and what is a good statistic in terms of turnover from one game, but Kerry forced 15 Mayo turnovers in that game last Saturday week. To me, that seems like a fairly high statistic for a team that don't have the collective will to defend.
Yeah, well, if you want to get into statistics, then you have to mine down into what's a turnover. So if Mayo kick the ball out over the sideline, or if the keeper spills the ball, or if the corner forward drops it when he's about to shoot, that's a turnover. So statistics can paint a picture, but they don't tell the whole story. Kerry had more attacks than Mayo in that game, and with their attacking prowess, you would expect them, therefore, to be more emphatic on the scoreboard. But because Mayo defended better and didn't give up the scoring opportunities that Kerry did, they were able to be much more efficient in defence and in attack. So statistics don't really tell the whole story.
Can I ask you, so obviously you spot this, Aidan, presumably the Kerry management team are spotting something similar as well. If you have the time, it's generally accepted that after the league final, Kerry's next significant game is more than likely, given the quality of Munster, going to be in the Super 8s. What should you be focused on? How do you change? Because if they don't have the individuals, they've got to resort to scheme. So what can they do from a collective scheme point of view to try and fix this?
Yeah, I suppose certainly not for me to telling Kerry management how to go about their business. They're well capable of doing that themselves. But looking in from the outside, for me, they need to better protect the run. So everybody has that weakness. If the team run the ball well, it's difficult to deal with. But in the first instance, if we focus on that Mayo game as an example, Mayo were getting out of defence and into the heart of the Kerry defence far too easily, and so they need to build a shield in there that at the very least slows the opposition down in building their attacks. After that, the difficulty is, or has been, that when they are in the defensive position, they're not making their tackles. Now, there were very, very good examples of, and Sean O'Shea was invariably involved in this, that whenever their half-forward line worked back into that half-back line and doubled up and closed off space for Mayo, there were very, very good examples of Kerry turning the ball over there in those situations. And I think that's the template for them. There is another little area that I would worry if I was a Kerry man, in that they don't really seem to have an anchor or a leader in defence. Paul Murphy's obviously playing in that role through the league primarily, and I'm not really sure he reads this aspect of the game. He's a brilliant footballer, very, very good in the front foot, very creative, and all round generally good player. But I don't see him reading this aspect of the play whenever Kerry don't have the ball, seeing danger and getting into areas and helping others when inevitably he is unoccupied, he is in a cover position. But I'm not sure what the solution is for him. They'll know the personnel better than I do. But that would be a worry for me also.
So a sweeper, basically, is it?
A sweeper?
As in somebody who can drop deeper from 6 into sweep in front of the full back line?
No, so Paul Murphy already plays in that role, so where he drops off and he's in a position to double up or cover or intercept ball. So that you can call that a sweeper if you want. But I'm not sure that he does that very effectively. There are other similar teams in the country play a similar role, and they're much more effective when the opposition run the ball. That player, sweeper if you want to call it, he has to read the play early. If he's sitting in the pocket trying to intercept and the opposition are running the ball, he needs to get out, meet the run, organise the players around him, make sure half forwards are working in, and that's a particular job that isn't maybe described as a sweeper.
How is it described? Sorry, and who is good at that? Who are you thinking of?
Well, from a Kerry perspective, I'm not. I don't know the solution. I don't know their personnel well enough. But if you want to think of somebody national who does that very well, Johnny Cooper is probably the best in the country at it. Cian O'Sullivan, very, very good at it. There are very, very good examples. Colin Cavanagh does it for Tyrone. I mean, this is a common role. This is a fundamental part of defending. This is...
Yeah, so
you don't get an all-star for this position at the end of the year, but it's probably the most important position in the team.
And not to labour the point, you're saying you wouldn't refer to that as a sweeper. How come?
Well, the sweeper sits in front of the full back line, waits for people to kick the ball in on top of them and tries to intercept. And that's the basic job of a sweeper who sits in, plays that position. This is more a cover role. Yes, in some elements of the play he might be a sweeper early stages, but when the opposition run the ball, he's no longer a sweeper. So he's then a chief organiser. He's very, very important in team's communication. He meets the run. He doubles up in the tackle.
Right.
He tells players where to go. And
we've been talking about this wrong.
Much more than a sweeper.
We've so basically, I like to, because I would say that when Owen's using the word sweeper, it's kind of just how it has been interpreted. So everybody would have said Cian O'Sullivan, he's the sweeper on the team, but actually you're saying he's also far more important. He's kind of I don't want to import terms from other sports, but a defensive QB kind of person.
Yeah. I suppose it's much more than sweeper. I think that's probably accepted broadly now. It's the most important role on the team. Yes, and for parts of the game, if a player drops off out of the middle third to cover, there are elements of the traditional sweeper role in what he does. But the way how dynamic the game is now, it is much more than that. Not to rehash what I've just said, but also when you win the ball back, that player is key because he is the counter-attacker. He is the free person who, so if a wing-back wins the ball back and transfers it inside to a Cian O'Sullivan on the burst, he's in 10 or 15 yards of space. He sees what's ahead of him. He sees where the space is to kick to or run into, and he orchestrates the counter-attack as well. So it's much more important and more integral to how the team attack and defend than maybe just to label it as a sweeper.
You were saying then last week as well, Aidan, and kind of a final point of this is that the league final could potentially become a sobering experience from a Kerry perspective. Is that something you'd stand by this week?
Well, that the way the permutations have run out, that depends on Mayo, really. I do think it would be if James Horan decided, right, I've had a look at possibilities of who can contribute here in the summer, and I'm going to go full out with what I believe is my best 15 or 18 or 20 and see can we bring silverware back. I don't necessarily think he's going to do that. I think he's going to have to use the opportunity to really test in a pressure environment the players that have come in and done well for him through the league. So I would see him looking at 5 or 6 fellas that he thinks can really contribute in the championship next Sunday, which will obviously not have them on full power. You may not see Gillian O'Connor, Lee Keegan, some of the sort of more recognisable names. So if Mayo were on full power, I would worry about Kerry next Sunday, but it may not pan out that way.
Yeah, Gillian O'Connor obviously was missing last week and Lee Keegan came on, so you'd expect him to give Kerry a good old rattle again.
Listen, I'm sure Mayo are there to win the game. You don't pass up national silverware, but if you're James Horan and Mayo, the only show in town is Sam O'Bara. That's all they're interested in this year. So if this can be used as a as a mechanism to make them put themselves in a better position for the championship. They'll use every opportunity for that, I'm sure.
Aidan, just a quick question. How impressive were Tyrone? It looks like they've finally got out of their own way and started to play to their own strengths. And when they do that, they look very dangerous.
Yeah, it pains me to say they were very impressive on Sunday. I have to take my hat off to them. I've seen them quite a lot over the last couple of years, and probably even Tyrone, most hardened Tyrone supporter would agree with me saying that, effective as they can be, they're frustrating to watch sometimes. When you look at the array of football and talent that they have, you always come away from a Tyrone game feeling maybe there's a bit more in them, But on Sunday, their ability and their mentality around kicking the ball in attack was a revelation to me now. I hadn't seen that initiative or that real desire to do that from them before, and they were very, very effective in it.
Is Stephen O'Neill getting the credit for that, do you think?
I don't know. You would think, because operating where Cathal McShane is now, that's where Stephen O'Neill obviously liked to play, and the service that Cathal McShane is getting would be a dream for someone like Stephen O'Neill. So you would imagine if he has influence on their attacking play, and you presume he wouldn't be there otherwise, that he has had a hand in it. Mickey Hart's around a long time now, and I'm sure he's in full control of everything that happens in terms of game plan in Tyrone, so I don't think we can bypass Mickey Hart either. But what they've done, there were signs of this earlier in the league, but what they're doing now is very, very impressive. And of course, they retain the ability, if somebody comes and drops 15 inside the 45, they retain the ability to play that very well. They've done it for 3 or 4 years now, but this is a significant other string to their bow, which was very, very impressive and very effective on Sunday.
Good stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Okay, lads. Thank you.
It's Aidan O'Rourke giving us some thoughts on Kerry's defensive frailties. He's touched a nerve.
Yeah, big time. Well, like the point I do agree with, and I pointed out to him there, is that if you're up against Conor McManus, who's marking him? Who is your marquee man marker? That's the one thing he's right about. But in terms of wasting the league, like really...
Well, what's the defensive structure? What is Kerry's defensive system?
Well, they have, like, if you watch the first couple of games of the league, the defensive system was a blanket, and it was at certain times. If the momentum is going against you, you drop players back time and time again until you get 13 or 14 behind the ball and you form a blanket. Now, for whatever reason, that didn't happen against Mayo. Was it because they'd already qualified for the league final, essentially? Was it because they wanted to keep something up the sleeve? It just felt to me that, like, you could watch that Mayo game, it was on national television, and it's like, this team is a bit of a shambles. But then even if you dig a little bit deeper into it, it's really not the case. Like, the idea of a wasted league, really, or kind of the idea that they're not reactive enough, or they don't, like, the idea that they don't have a collective desire to actually defend, I just don't think it's true. And, like, I think you have to give credit for the way they've reacted to that Mayo defeat as well. I mean, they made a change in midfield straight away. They got cleaned out in midfield that weekend. Like, let's not forget that it was Matthew Rowan and Aidan O'Shea winning everything around the middle of the park, and they still, on the back foot, Kerry were still in with a shout of winning the game, despite the fact that they had no collective will to defend, despite the fact that they got cleaned out in midfield. It wasn't a bad showing for a team in that position. I just think there was a bit of an overreaction on his part to that, and also the idea that he's saying, well, Mayo are going to be missing Lee Keegan and Killian O'Connor this weekend, or whatever it may be. Like, I mean, Kerry still have a couple of players to come back, and namely in the guys of Paul Ganey and David Moore and Gavin White at half back. Like, like the idea that this is a one-way street, that Mayo are the only team in the country who are playing a game where they know that they're going to be a bit better in the summer, just isn't true, especially when it comes to this weekend.
So you're still confident that Kerry are doing everything right? They've got nothing wrong so far.
When did I say that?
The league has been
When did
perfect.
I say that? When did I say that?
Well, you're taking little...
I literally just said I agreed with Aidan O'Rourke there on the point that Kerry don't have a marquee defender, so you've just made something up.
You've denied that he has a point when he says that their defensive structure is anything specific. You're saying that the evidence of the Mayo game needs to be entirely thrown out on the basis of the fact that they'd already qualified. That was the point you made.
I didn't say that at all.
If you
I didn't say that at all. I just said that they don't have a marquee defender, which is a point that Aidan O'Rourke made, and that I agree with. Who did they mark when when they're up against Monaghan? And they struggled in the early stages against Monaghan. Then they managed to rectify it.
And what is the defensive structure they have? You're saying it's a blanket defence when things are going okay at the start of the league, but as the league finishes and the other teams start to get good and bring on good players, And they're coming up against the best teams who are beginning to play well. What is the defensive structure?
What do you mean when other teams are getting good and they start to bring on their best players? Like as if Kerry have like their entire squad ready to go and they're all raring to rock. Like that's just not true.
Okay, so. But that wasn't the question.
The defensive structure is that they're going to play a half-forward line, which they've always done, which is fairly energetic, but this energetic half-forward line will drop back and defend far more than they've ever done. In fairness, he singled out Sean O'Shea for his defensive work. In fairness, you bring back a half-back in the likes of Gavin O'Brien who will contribute to the midfield effort. If you lose a break in midfield, he's dropping back again. The same with Darragh Moynihan or whoever else occupies that role. And so if they lose a kick-out, they're basically defending with 12 men behind the ball at the very least. You can add in the fact that perhaps...
The tackle technique of everybody else apart from Sean O'Shea is good enough?
The tackle technique has improved to no end. This year. That is one of the points that really rankled with me. Like, just to steal what Tomas O'Shea said the other day, and I know this is getting into statistics that clearly aren't that are frowned upon a little bit. So Tomas said that they conceded 10.98 in the league last year, which is extraordinary. I wouldn't have even remembered that. This year it's 4.80. That's a difference of 6.18. Like, are you telling me that there isn't a better defensive structure or a better tackle technique? Because if you are, it's nonsense. Like that just can't be true if you're conceding that amount less.
Well, I mean, like different league campaigns, like let's.
It's chalk and cheese, Ger.
Yeah, exactly.
The defensive setup from Kerry this year, it is chalk and cheese when you
comparing one campaign with another campaign, how the game evolves, and like, did one of those games become a shootout? Did two of those games become shootouts? Like. It was also not a league campaign where it had the old management team who probably didn't care as much about it because they knew exactly what they had already and they were trying to bring in some new players. This one, they clearly tried to set their stall out very early on. They've gone with a blanket defence for the first number of games. But here's somebody who knows exactly what he's talking about, pointing out some issues, and the immediate response is to be defensive about it and go, this is all bollocks.
Like again,
with the exception of one single point,
which is a vital point.
It's one small point.
Which is a vital point.
Okay, so they've no marquee defenders.
He's also based his entire argument around a game where Kerry have missed their starting full back. They've gone with Jack Sherwood at full back for the entirety of the league campaign. They've won every single game that he started. He missed one game. It was against Mayo. They lost that game. Full back is a fairly important position, Ger.
It is.
So I think that there is far more to this argument than the idea that, oh look, there's oceans of space for Mayo to run through. God, Kerry are back to the way they used to be again.
Well, let's see. We'll wait and see. It's interesting how touchy everybody in Kerry seems to be about somebody.
Well, I'm getting like, to be fair, you just managed to stir the pot there nicely, where I'm getting touchier than I expected to be. Like, I didn't actually get that angry when I was reading Aidan O'Rourke's column because I respect his opinion.
All right, there's still a limited number of tickets available for our Heineken Rugby Club roadshow this Wednesday night, the 27th of March in the Olympia Theatre. We've got a brilliant cast of guests: Keith Wood, Shane Jennings, Malcolm McKelly, Stephen Ferris, and the legend that is Michael Cheika. We're going to be giving you a final opportunity today and tomorrow to win 2 VIP tickets to the Olympia this morning on OTB AM. To be with a chance of winning, share this morning's stream and tell us who Michael Cheika replaced as the Leinster head coach back in 2005. Again, if you don't win this morning, there's still a limited number of tickets available. Get on to offtheball.com/events to buy your tickets. Here's Kieran Cunningham talking about Irish football operating in Delaney land. Have a look.
So over the last 14, 15 years, the FAI has turned into Delaney land. That it's become his personal fiefdom. He's surrounded himself with his own people. And he's still going to be there. And you're going to have somebody in there and they're just going to be a face. And like the whole thing stinks. Like, it makes no sense. Like, even him getting this title of executive vice president and all the way that's linked in seemingly with, if you have that title, it will help him stay on the UEFA executive. And I don't know. I think there's a huge amount of anger out there. And I think the rent issue is massive. I think that's annoyed a hell of a lot of people, more than a lot of other issues, because €36,000 a year is what a lot of people earn, or more than they earn. And this is a guy that was earning a huge salary, and that rent was paid for. So all this talk that he'd taken a wage cut, and if you add 360 and 36,000, you've nearly 400,000. It wasn't much of a wage cut.
Yeah, good stuff from Kieran Cunningham and Dan McDonnell on Off the Ball last night. Delaney Land, was that coined by Kieran Cunningham in that piece last night? Well, either way, we're looking back at Delaney Land and how he managed to construct Delaney Land over the past couple of decades or so. So we've been looking back at some of the moments of John Delaney's career, an accountant, of course, by trade, and rose to prominence as treasurer of the FAI. And we were looking around for evidence over the past couple of days or so as to how John Delaney managed to gather this nous to become somebody who would mark himself as a fairly competent treasurer, I think it's fair to say. And there was one piece of content that was made a couple of years ago, John the Baptist, on independent.ie, which gives us a great background into the business acumen of John Delaney.
I went down to a bakery down in Kerry. There was a family bakery, part owned by our family and part owned by
John the Baker?
Yeah, not Pat the Baker, John the Baker. And I ran a bakery for a couple of years. So
Were you any good?
I didn't bake, but I had to learn. I'll tell you, some of the best principles I've learned came from running that bakery. I remember going down first week, there was £100,000 owed to the sheriff in back taxes, and the health inspector was in within 2 weeks saying he was going to close the place. That's a fact.
How did you deal with that?
Well, I had no feel for the bakery at times. I told the health inspector if he wanted to lose 40 jobs in Kerry, that was his business. He lived in Kerry. And he backed off straight away.
So you were clever enough to say that. So you're aware of how to speak to these people.
Well, I think there was a bit ballsy maybe, but he didn't want to close it because there was 40 jobs in Kerry would have been gone. And the sheriff, I wrote 10 post-dated checks out for a year, 10 grand a month, and thankfully they all cleared. And we made a go of it then. We made a real go of it.
So how did you go from the bakery? What happened then?
Bakery, I got involved with a logistics company in Waterford. I was partly involved with a furniture shop in Athlone from my dad as well. And I just took on different projects all the time, You don't have, the one thing I've learned, like we built the stadium, the Viva Stadium, when I got involved with the FAI. I think the same business principles apply to any business. So I didn't know how to build a stadium. I didn't know effectively how to run a pub. I knew the other side of the pub like any young lad, or a furniture shop or a logistics company. But when you learn the business.
So that's a background of John Delaney's business experience as explained by himself in John the Baptist. And as I've said, Saipan really is when he kind of burst onto the public consciousness when things were going down in Japan. He held a fairly iconic press conference in Merrion Square here in Dublin. We can bring you an image of that. Can we just zoom in a little bit closer onto that? That's right, Ger Gilroy right there. Two worlds colliding, two careers about to boom. And we saw, I think at the time, a fairly definite stance from John Delaney on Saipan. He wasn't pulling any punches. He knew exactly what he was going to say, and he was clear and concise when he spoke on the 6-1 to Uno O'Hagan in 2002.
John Delaney of the FAI joins us from our Waterford studio. What's your reaction to that interview?
Well, Roy is obviously very hurt. He sounds very emotional, but we all are. Everybody involved in football, from speaking to people in the hotel in Japan, the players, the management, everybody's hurted by this situation. But it doesn't seem that we can achieve a resolution here, to be fair.
Do you not think it's possible for both sides to be big about this, to forget what's happened, and to go on and continue with the World Cup?
It's difficult to see, given the circumstances. Let's not forget that the meeting in Saipan was emotionally charged. There was a lot of comment made, which we've all read in the papers, and it's very hard.
But it's a week later. I mean, the time has passed. Tempers should have cooled. There should be maybe wiser counsel should prevail.
I don't think that's achievable at this stage, to be fair. Again, the transcript of what Roy has said in full, we'll hear it at 8:30. We'll go to the team hotel, but I don't see any change in the attitude, to be straight.
So John Delaney speaking on the 6-1 there when everything was going down in Saipan at the time. As ever, though, it took him 12 years to give a full, brilliant answer on Saipan, and it was, of course, in John the Baptist on independent.ie.
So Saipan was a snapshot of how, in my opinion, the malaise in the organisation, how it was run at national level. And as a result, we were able to call for reform and implement reform, because at that stage there was very few obstacles to reform, given the nature of how Saipan had exercised not only the Irish public, but the world public. And no organisation, no matter how big or how small, could say, listen, Saipan was just an accident, let life just continue, and let's plod along as we were. No way, that couldn't happen. The public expected a reaction. I think a lot of people in the football public wanted to see the reforms, and the catalyst for those reforms was this crazy island out in the Pacific, which I've never been to, but that was the catalyst.
So he talks about the malaise in the association at the time, and then 3 years later, in 2005, after Fran Rooney steps down, John Delaney becomes interim CEO of the FAI. Then 1 year later, he becomes full-time CEO of the FAI, and he stays until that position, of course, until last Saturday when he becomes executive vice president. So we want to look back at some of the key moments of John Delaney's tenure as CEO, and one of the key storylines has been with Roy Keane, and as you can imagine from that interview we just played from 6-1 a couple of moments ago in 2002, Roy Keane wasn't the biggest fan of John Delaney in 2002, and then even a couple of years later as Ipswich Town manager, he voiced his displeasure with John Delaney once again.
We've been robbed, the honesty of the game. It was one of the group matches, I'm sure it was Georgia, where Ireland got a penalty. It was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen from one of their defenders, which changed the whole course of the game. I think Robbie scored a penalty and Ireland went on to win it. I don't remember the FAI after the game saying we should give him a replay.
Well, the FAI are asking for the game to be replayed now.
Who? John Delaney? He's on about the honesty and I wouldn't take any notice of that man.
Really?
No. So people forget the last time I were in the World Cup, 2002. People seem to forget what was going on in that World Cup, and that man's on about honesty. I was one of the players. He didn't have the courtesy to ring me. He got interviewed and all he said was, I don't know where he is. He's on the island. He's on the island somewhere, I think. I've been involved in Ireland since I was 15 years of age. And that man didn't have the decency even to make a phone call.
But he knew where to contact you.
He could have phoned me. Of course he could have. Try my hotel room. Yeah, you can laugh. That was the World Cup. Yeah. And he's on about the honesty of the game. He wouldn't
that's what they're saying. The game was important. So should an exception be made and should it be replayed? Because there was
they should have cleared it. They should have cleared it. Should have cleared the ball. Yeah. Where was the defenders? The ball bunks in the 6-yard box.
So as you can probably guess, that's right after the Henry handball. And we will come back to John Delaney's role in that in just a moment, but I want to stick with Roy Keane for the time being, because John Delaney, in fairness to him, managed to mend relationships with Roy Keane, particularly just before he got appointed as Martin O'Neill's assistant manager when they were appointed to manage the Republic of Ireland. And he was on the Late Late talking about making things up with Roy Keane.
I've said things in the past which I would regret that I said about Roy, and I think he probably would as well. The good news is we're ringing each other now. And
you're saying nice things to each other on the other end of the phone.
Of course we are, but okay. I mean, there's not a love in yet, you know. But
what does that mean?
What it means is professional, it's business-like. And seriously, Ryan, this is our country. Yeah. This is our country. It's our national team.
Sure.
And no one's bigger than our country. No one's bigger than our national team. Not John Delaney, not Roy Keane, not Martin O'Neill. And it's incumbent on all of us to do the best for our country.
For sure.
Simple as that.
So tell me then, after that tape and then with the passage of time and the mending of fences, as you've been discussing, you then met Roy when? About a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
On the Tuesday after the bank holiday, yeah.
Okay, and at that stage the Martin O'Neill decision had been made?
Well, no, Martin in principle had accepted the role.
Where did you meet Roy?
I went in a hotel in London.
In London?
Yeah.
And when you, in a room or a bar?
I met at reception, as it turned out, because I'd sat with Martin for a meal,
yeah,
and Roy had come down later around 11 o'clock. So
okay.
we actually met at reception.
And when you shook hands, I take it?
Yeah, straight away.
And you sat down and had beer, coffee, something like that?
No, we went up to a room and the three of us sat down and for about 40 or 50 minutes.
Didn't know where that was going for a second.
It's not quite a loving, I told you.
Not that quick, it's only so much. So no, but you went up and you went...
A threesome in London.
So let's double back to the Henry handball situation, and in the immediate aftermath of that terrible, terrible day before the World Cup in South Africa, John Delaney called this press conference.
The FAI today confirmed it would lodge a complaint with FIFA following last night's World Cup playoff match between France and the Republic of Ireland in Paris. Conclusive video evidence of a deliberate handball by Thierry Henry, which led to France's additional time goal, has been seen by millions of football fans worldwide. The blatantly incorrect decision by the referee to award the goal has damaged the integrity of the sport. And we now call on FIFA, as the world governing body for our sport, to organise for this match to be replayed. The handball was recognised by the FIFA commissioner, the referee observer and the match officials, as well as by the player himself. There is precedent for the invalidation of such results. In 2005, the Bureau of the FIFA World Cup Organising Committee reached a decision to invalidate the result of a World Cup qualification game between Uzbekistan and Bahrain on the basis of a technical error by the referee of the match. The FAI is hoping that FIFA and its disciplinary committee will, on behalf of football fans worldwide,
act in a similar fashion so the standards of fair play and integrity can be protected. We've also written to the French FA today as well to ask them to accede to replay, given the world nature of what happened last night. And it's up to the people who govern the game for me now. I mean, every time I go to a FIFA Congress, I hear about fair play and integrity and all those wonderful words. And this is not just a league match. This isn't a game of 36 matches over a season or anything like that. This was a defining game that the whole world were watching. And if FIFA believe in fair play and integrity and all the things we're told when we go to congresses and through all the different literature we get, this is their opportunity to step forward.
So, of course, John Delaney proceeded to ask for Ireland to be Team 33 at the 2010 World Cup. Sepp Blatter then laughed at John Delaney very famously, and then Sepp Blatter wasn't laughing much longer when he realised how much it would cost him. Take it away, Ray Darcy.
What was that 5 million? I heard you talking the other day. The way it sounded to me was that we were being a nuisance over the Thierry Henry handball, and they said go away and shut up, and here's 5 million.
I'll tell you exactly what happened there. We felt we had a legal case against FIFA because of how the World Cup hadn't worked out for us with the Henry handball. Also the way Blatter behaved, if you remember, on stage, having a snigger at us and having a laugh at us. So that day when I went in and told him how I felt about him, and there were some expletives used, we came to an agreement. And that was a Thursday, and on Monday the agreement was all signed and all done. It's a very good agreement for the FAI, a very legitimate agreement for the FAI. I'm bound by confidentiality for naming the figure. You've put a figure out there, right? And fair play to you.
What was the agreement?
Well, it was a payment to the association.
But why was the payment?
Not to proceed with a legal case.
All right.
Not to proceed with a legal case. And in there, then decided to put in a confidentiality agreement where I can't talk about the amount involved. You've used the figure there. Well done to you.
Right. Okay. Well, it's out there.
It was a good and a very good, legitimate deal for the FAI.
So let's just wrap up some of the other defining moments of John Delaney's career as CEO of the FAI. His views on the League of Ireland have been well documented. Take this quote from 2014. He said, "The League of Ireland is a difficult child for the organisation," a quote that seemed to stick with him right the way through till today. Appointing Giovanni Trapattoni then was a big moment for him as well, and he tells a story in John the Baptist about their early relationship in the early days of Trapp as Ireland manager.
I've an affection for him, because he is this great legend in football, isn't it? He just didn't come to manage Ireland. Look what he did in football before, playing in winning 2 European Cups, marking Pelé, his incredible success as a manager, and you've got to respect all of that. And by and large, he did a very good job for us. I always tell the one about Trapp. We were down in Tramore, and there was no media present, about 400 or 500 there, Club of the Year, and we're all in the room having the crack. And we had a thing that I'd tell a few stories at a mic, but the Trapp would come up and speak, and so I'm up telling a few stories. And I said, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the Irish international manager, Giovanni Trapattoni." And he takes the mic and he says, excuse me, my English is not so good. And I did a mic and said, "Wasn't so fucking bad when you were doing the wages."
So I guess it's kind of open to opinion whether or not the Trapattoni's regime was a success or not. But one thing that certainly wasn't a success was the Vantage Club ticket scheme in 2008. And actually recently, in fairness to John Delaney, was speaking about that. And he says that mistakes were made 10 years ago. The pricing was based on solid advice from major international bodies at the time. The pricing was wrong, obviously, because the recession began to bite. And I think, to be very clear, lessons have been learned. And this time the pricing is realistic. And we think it is the best value in Irish sport. Delaney also went for the Vice President's role of the Olympic Council of Ireland in 2005. He went in, he got it, he went in unopposed, and then 11 years later he released this statement. This is at the end of 2016, remember, a fairly turbulent year for the OCI. He says his role was never active in the day-to-day running of the OCI, and he was in a position to attend only 5 of the last 13 board meetings prior to the Rio Olympics, and he had no involvement in the OCI's handling of ticketing arrangements for the Rio Olympic Games. So on a final point then, I guess the question is, what does the future hold for John Delaney? Could he potentially go into politics or something like that? Well, there's only one place to finish up. He answers that very question in John the Baptist.
It's actually on the pitch after Ireland lost to Italy in the World Cup quarter-final in 1990. And Jack wouldn't go out on the pitch. Jack was devastated they'd lost the game. So Dad got Charlie Haughey, to go out on the pitch to keep the crowd entertained, if you like, before Jack came out afterwards. And Haughey loved it. I mean, he absolutely adored it, and he was waving to everybody.
What's your own politics, John?
Mine? None really, honestly, because I tell you, I work with all different parties now for the good of football.
Would you ever go into politics?
No. I mean, people say never, but I've been asked to do it. No, Barry.
Who's asked you?
I was asked by a Fianna Fáil minister in Croke Park one day, would I run in either South Tipperary or Waterford, and in 1/10 of a second. No.
When was that?
That would have been 07, 08, around that time. And he meant it now. It wasn't a throwaway. But it wouldn't be from me. You know, football, I love football. I just love football. I've loved it since I was born. Will I stay in it all my life? Probably not, because, you know, that mightn't be afforded to you, the opportunity to stay in it all your life. But I love it. It's a passion, and it gives me energy and drive. I mean, no day is work to me.
All right, reminder that Ireland against Georgia is live tonight on Off the Ball. You can get it on offtheball.com, on News Talk Radio, and wherever it is that you consume our action. A picture of Stephen Ward there. It's also going to be on our YouTube channel. He's on commentary duty alongside Nathan. That one kicking off. Build-up starts at 7, and we'll be on air all the way until 10 o'clock for victory or defeat. Darren?
That's where we start our round of Ger, the Republic of Ireland, aiming to make it 2 wins from 2 in European Championship qualifying. They face a Georgia side who lost to Switzerland in their first outing, but the Georgians are in really good form. 2018 brought promotion from Group D1 of the UEFA Nations League. Before that defeat by the Swiss, they'd lost just 1 game in 7, and 5 of those were victories. The build-up to the game has been overshadowed by reported protests. Fans said to raise concerns about the governance of the FAI by throwing tennis balls onto the pitch. Put your balls away, the message from Mick McCarthy and James McLean.
We've come in to play a game, and that's my issue. Outside influences, when I don't get involved with things I can't affect, and this is one of them. The only thing I can affect is our preparation for the game. And we try and make sure that we pin everything down and nail it down and making sure it's right, and then we get a good performance. And if we do, I think people will think a lot happier about us.
You see it happen a few times in games, and I just don't see the point behind it, because throwing tennis balls on the pitch is going to get someone what they change. I just think it's stupid, and you're just disrupting the game, and I just don't see any benefit to it whatsoever.
They're coming to watch a football match, and they want us to win and giving us the best chance, and that's getting behind us and not having any outside influences affecting that. But I can't do anything about it. If they do, maybe I'll take a tennis racket with me.
Cardiff City believe their contract to sign Emiliano Sala from Nantes was not legally binding. The striker passed away in a plane crash 2 months ago. Shortly after joining the Welsh club for €17 million, Nantes have completed to transfer and say they complained to FIFA over the failure to pay the fee, saying the certificate had indeed been registered, but Cardiff are refusing to pay a transfer fee, saying the paperwork was never completed as the first dose of documents were not signed off by FIFA. A brain injury charity has warned that UEFA need to investigate why Fabian Schär was allowed to carry on playing for Switzerland after he was knocked out cold in a Euro 2020 qualifier. Schär clashed heads with a Georgia player during that 2-0 win after receiving emergency help. The Newcastle United defender went on to complete the game. After the match, he said, "It looks awful. I can't remember anything. I was out for a few seconds. My skull is still humming and I've got neck ache and a bruise on my forehead. But it was worth it," Headway Chief Executive Peter McCabe said. "What is it going to take to make football take concussion seriously?" He added, "How many more players will have their careers and, more importantly, their lives and long-term health put at risk by the sport's inability to follow its own protocols?" Chelsea will have their appeal against a 2-window transfer ban heard by FIFA on April 11th. The Premier League side were sanctioned in relation to 29 cases where rules relating to the transfer of players under 18 were broken. A statement from the club say they were astonished by FIFA's decision. In rugby, Josh van der Flier is unlikely to play for the rest of the season. The Leinster flanker suffered a groin injury during Ireland's Six Nations win over France. The province have revealed he underwent surgery last week and has been ruled out for 12 weeks. Robbie Henshaw has been to the UK to see a specialist over his dead leg. He is unlikely to feature in the Champions Cup quarter-final clash against Ulster. Noel Reid and Sean Cronin are following return to play protocols after suffering head injuries in the weekend's Pro 14 defeat to Edinburgh. And finally, for the first time in history, a women's match will be the main event at WWE event WrestleMania. 32-year-old Baldoyle woman Becky Lynch headlines in front of 80,000 people and millions more watching on television. She'll face the UFC Hall of Famer Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair. Every WrestleMania main eventer since 1985 has been American or Canadian, with the exception of 2 people, the Frenchman Andre the Giant, who faced Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3 in 1987, and now Ireland's Becky Lynch. She spoke back in January about the prospect of main eventing the biggest show of the year for WWE, and admits even her friends said it would never happen.
I heard in an interview you had a friend who told you when you first started this journey that you would never main event WrestleMania, and that was an unrealistic goal.
He said, "It's nice to have dreams, Becky, but be realistic." He said it with a smile on his face, you know, but it was one of those things where he was like, that's never going to happen. Yeah. Somebody that I love and value their opinion, but to them, and I think a lot of the world, that was never a possibility.
Oh yeah.
But right now it's never been more of a possibility, but it's also not for any other reason than it's the thing that's intriguing people the most.
Yeah.
And that's the point that I've always wanted to get to.
You're going to be there.
I will be there, yeah. Kind of a seismic moment. People either kind of get it or they don't. We had the debate in the office about whether or not it was even sports news. And it's not sports news because, of course, it's not
entertainment
strictly
news.
Speaking a sport, but it is an Irish person at the very top of their trade, and a very, very sought after spot.
Well, don't justify it. You don't need to justify yourself. Just enjoy it.
Have you been to WrestleMania before?
No, first time.
Class. Have you been to a WWE event before?
Yes. Yeah, one of the live shows in Dublin when I was younger.
I'd say that's going to be unbelievable. Like, I don't know, I'm not sure who was saying that to you out in the office, but I think WrestleMania is a legitimate...
Neil Tracy, I'm going to name and shame him. He said it's like giving the results of Coronation Street.
I would I would have it right up there. Maybe not near the top of the bucket list, but I'm sure most people would love to go to WrestleMania, no?
Like Ryder Cup would be there, World Cup final would be there. It's probably like the Super Bowl in that the entertainment factors in as much as the sporting nature of it. The idea that there's so few sports in the world where men and women are treated equally. So to have any kind of sporting endeavour, even though it's not strictly speaking a sport, where not only are they treated equally, but they've decided that they are the biggest draws. They will draw more bums on seats and more pay-per-view buys than anyone else. Is a pretty seismic moment in women involved in any athletic pursuit.
You'll be the one in the Kerry jersey and the tricolour.
I will have a tricolour. I'm not sure if I'll have a Kerry jersey. There'll be someone there with a Kerry jersey there.
Darn good stuff. Enjoy that. It's 8:57 this morning here on OTB AM with loads more coming up for you. A reminder, you can listen to the show every morning on offtheball.com, just like a sports breakfast radio show. Hit listen, minimise and go about your morning. Now, we recently spoke to Tipperary's Will Fleury after he rebounded from his first MMA loss with a second round submission win at Bellator 217 in Dublin, taking his pro record to 5-1. Here's a clip from that. The full interview is going to be on our YouTube channel a little bit later on today.
I was pretty enthusiastic about taking it as soon as he'd missed weight, so any mental edge he thought he had was gone then.
Yeah, I think the enthusiasm was pretty clear for all to see, including to the media afterwards. Like, I'm interested to get you...
Up, yeah.
You can actually play some of this just to actually give you a picture of how enthusiastic Will was.
There's always doubts when you're going to fight, man. You don't know the result. You're talking shit if you think you do. But no, like, look, I work incredibly hard in my training since I believe in my performance, you know? And I don't understand people who don't. Like, my performance here is based on what I've done in the gym for the last 8 weeks, or even the last 9 years of training, like. And I've never left that stone unturned. I've never kind of, I'll take a back step here, you know? I won't go and do that session. I'm not that guy. I get in, I do everything I have to do to be as professional as I can be to get in here, put on those performances. I'm the best middleweight in Ireland by a fucking distance, you know?
Pretty pumped up after that. Like, it was really interesting actually speaking to you beforehand, the mindset that you were in, that there was this very thin line that you pictured between entitlement and the required confidence of actually going out and winning. Was there ever a point after what happened last year that confidence was chipped away? Was that confidence real going into that fight?
Yeah, definitely. Like, the confidence was real. And was my confidence chipped away? No, but it was challenged. And I had to respond to that. And I had to get into myself to respond to that, if you know what I mean. As in, who are you? And why are you who you are? Like, why are you that? So that felt like it was being challenged. And I always saw myself as, you're the best middleweight in Ireland, you're an ass whooper, you're going to be Bellator middleweight champion. I lost my first fight in Bellator. That's not a good start. So, you know, get on that now. Prove it, like, go out there and smash it, like. I've done the work, that, you know, I've said that there. But it's the reality, like, as in, I've done what it takes to be the person I am. So go out and show that, like.
Talk to us a little bit about that, being the best Irish middleweight. What's the distance between you and the rest?
I'd say it's considerable enough, like. But the main thing is, like, none of the other lads around seem to want to do it. So I've had plenty of fights lined up where guys have pulled out. I don't want guys who are going to pull out anymore. So, you know, get me opposition who'll show.
Yeah.
Not miss weight.
You're thinking internationally, though, I presume.
Yeah, of course. Like English lads, Americans. Like I said in the interviews afterwards, I'd love an American for the next one just to show standard over here. And I want to be representative of the standard over here.
And in an ideal world, would the Yankee come over here to fight?
Yeah, like we got an amazing crowd. It was an unbelievable atmosphere, so why not?
How big a factor was that in terms of getting yourself hyped up, the home crowd?
Yeah, like I was kind of thinking during that, like I walked down, I live in Fleury, and I walked down O'Connell Street to go to the fights, like to come around to the Tree Arena, and I was playing all the trad tunes and passing the GPO, and I was super pumped up, like. And then I would, like, when I got there, I was like, okay, just calm it a bit, like, you know, just don't be this emotional. But I'm kind of glad that I was, as in, I really harnessed that energy that day, and like, I kind of felt like I was going in there to defend what it is to be Irish and all this kind of crap. And I know it sounds like bollocks now, but like, it worked, you know. And being at home and coming out and raising that flag up and the crowd going mental, it got me going, you know. There's no way, like, you know, it touches something in your soul and you feel that, and like, there was no way. I feel like it could have been anyone standing across from me in that cage. Like, it could have been Gegard Mousasi. I would have been winning, like, the result would have been the exact same.
When you're that emotional before a fight, can you still stick to the game plan?
Yeah, because like, you allow that emotion into your soul, but you're still clear-minded. So that's kind of the hard line to balance, I suppose, as in, can you allow yourself to feel that adrenaline, but still think clearly? And look, you're not always thinking clear, like, as in certain points, you know, your primal brain is just taking over and you're just reacting to things. But midway through that, like, even in between the rounds, you know, I was very cerebral of like looking over at him, seeing that he was broken. So I stood up 10 seconds early and started bouncing around in front of him just to make sure he knew, like, oh, he's fresh. This guy's coming back at me, like, things like that, like just observing what's happening around you. So stay in that mindset where you're clear, but you're also feeling the energy that's there, because that was some energy.
Yeah,
it was amazing. Like.
But also, that's not like, everybody's had an adrenaline rush at some point in their life. You don't necessarily need to be a top-class sports person to actually feel it. And it's not easy to actually think straight when you're going through an adrenaline rush. Is that something you've had to work on?
I suppose you do it so much. Like, I've been in so many intense situations with this that it becomes, you're more familiar with it, you can think a bit more easily. It's just the training and the having been there before, having been there at amateur level, and, you know, having built up to that point, and you have a confidence in the fact that, like, look, I know what I'm doing here, and I just have to observe and see how it's going to play out. And, like, I can influence how this all plays out.
So we put that full interview up for you a little bit later on youtube.com/offtheball, and just hit subscribe, and then anytime that we go live, you'll get a little notification to your phone to let you know that we're giving you some top quality content for free here across the Off the Ball platforms. Now we want to move on because yesterday Midi Olympique ran with the story that Roland O'Gara was prêt was ready to sign as part of the French coaching ticket for the Rugby World Cup. Obviously, Roland O'Gara works with us here at Off the Ball, and so we put a quick Skype call into New Zealand, and lo and behold, he appeared on the show to quieten rumours that he was ready to sign. Have a look.
I was kind of initiating that I would be interested in working in France at some stage, obviously, when I do finish up in Crusaders. I don't know when that will be, hopefully not for a while yet. And then I suppose out of the blue there's the potential to maybe get a role for this World Cup with France, is what he was saying. And I said, yeah, it would interest me, but nothing has come of it, you know.
And when did you speak to him?
Last week.
Okay, so that could still be alive, because certainly Midi Olympique, the report that's made gained the most traction over here is that you're open to hooking up with France for the World Cup, and that they're interested in you, and that this thing is on the point of being done.
Yeah, I saw it. I actually have the app on my phone, obviously, Rugby Rama, and I was learning more about it reading that than I had from any of it. So it's Pret Senior ready to sign, which is you know what I mean, that's farcical. It's you can't be ready to sign after a conversation with an agent that has nothing to do with anything that goes on within the it's like an agent in Irish rugby, which a lot of them are good guys, but you need to get past the agent stage and try and get into the IRFU before you, or the FFR before you're even talking ballpark, isn't it?
Yeah. So you said you'd be interested to the agent in getting involved for the World Cup. Straightforward for you? Like that's a no-brainer for you?
No, there's so many conditions that would have to be right, obviously, but
interested in opening discussions, it seems.
Exactly, that's it, Joe. Couldn't put it, but that is exactly it, because I think if there were the right conditions and you had an opportunity to work with players that I think are good players, I would always consider it.
So Ronan O'Gara talking to us last night to say that, well, his phone is ready to take some calls from whoever's interested. Look, it's great that he is being talked about at this moment for all those jobs, because ultimately that's what we want, a lot of Irish coaches and good jobs.
Without question. And obviously he's got to think what is best for him, when is best for him. Crucially, the question is, do jobs like this come along regularly, a job at that level with a test team in an exciting place? And the answer is no, they don't. That if you hold your fire for a year or two, taking the France job in 2 years' time, or a job at France, I should say, it's a bit more of a high pressurised situation, is it not?
Well, so I don't know. I obviously, I'm sure there are very in-depth conversations going on about, like, the best thing to do is take the job for the short term, take for the World Cup, and go off and get like one of the big club jobs in France afterwards, where you don't have the pressure of the French job, which is, a bit of a poison chalice, and has been since the guy who's now the CEO of the French Rugby Federation was actually in charge, which is basically a decade and a half. So that job has been various ways to describe it.
It's the Real Madrid of rugby.
No, it's not, because you don't win the Champions League every year, and you don't have a team of Galacticos, and you can't sign players.
Over your head, there are certain...
It's the Watford
political
of international rugby. It's where no matter how good a job you do, like, you're always getting undermined by the various clubs.
Well, Watford having a chance of winning the Champions League anytime soon. France could potentially win the World Cup in 2023.
France could potentially... Well, they could, yeah. They absolutely could. But they have as good a chance of winning this World Cup as they do of winning that one. Like, it's not beyond the bounds possibility that somehow, in a short period of time, everybody gets in the same wavelength and they play well. It's unlikely, right? It's highly unlikely. But you go and you do a good job, and the defence suddenly has a structure, and their attacking play has a structure based on the quality of the defence that you've put in, and you've installed that really quickly. You can use that as I now have that experience of what it's like to be in a World Cup. Go and take one of those great jobs. And the key thing here is that the money involved in coaching one of the top teams in France is way better than it would be for being the French coach, or an assistant coach with Ireland, or an assistant coach with any international team, or any international team's head coach. Joe Schmidt doesn't earn as much now as he would do if he was coaching Racing or Toulon or any of those big French clubs. So, it's important to remember that these jobs are short-lived. You get a short time to be in charge, and you should make as much money as you possibly can, because that's the whole point.
Yeah, and I do wonder if there's kind of a new trend of, especially in rugby, treating your coaching career almost like a playing career. That you look at yourself and you're like, I've got 10 years at my peak here. And for most coaches, well, actually, it's not just a rugby problem, is it? It is most sports, where you're like, I'm doing well right now. I've got to make hay while the sun is shining here in my career, because it's actually not too much of a common situation where somebody will be coaching all the way up to the age of their mid-50s or early 60s as a head coach in rugby, or any coach in rugby.
Yeah, and if you had genuine designs on being the France coach for the French World Cup in 2023, then it's too soon to be getting that job, because you know that there will be somebody fired in between now and then.
Probably 8 people fired as head coach between now and then.
It's not beyond the bounds possibility that there is 2 or 3 different coaching tickets, that the one who comes in next year isn't the one. But you at least then would have the experience of it, so that the next time it comes around, you'll also have worked in France, if that's your career plan. Who knows? Maybe the career plan is to, at some point, to take over Munster and do the Ireland thing, and that's what the most important aspect of this is. And it's impossible to tell. But certainly it's amazing that the options are there, and it's a clear sign to everybody else that you need to go around the world and you need to do what he's done if you want to make it. That at the same time, John Fogarty's going to be the Ireland scrum coach, hopefully, or certainly that's how it's being discussed at the moment, and he's gone and come straight through the system that he's come through, and it's worked out for him. So
The other question I'd have, and I could be totally wrong here, is if Ronan O'Gara still sees himself in the learning phase of his career, is it such a good idea to go in with an international team? Granted, if it's on a short-term basis and you've got that one focus at the World Cup, that's good. But say, for example, now if you're learning your trade and after the Six Nations, what are you actually doing? Of course, you can build up kind of developmental tools, scouting tools, going along with the head coach to actually watch players and pick up things that way. But actually, hands-on coaching experience at certain times of the year at internationals just isn't there. Like, granted, if he takes it over in the middle of the summer and he's prepping a team before their warm-ups and then into the World Cup, and it is only a 3-month agreement, then, you know, that's high octane, that's going to be good stuff. But from my kind of very knowledgeless standpoint here, if I was somebody who wanted a lot of experience at the early stages of my career, I'd rather stick with a club, as high risk as it seems.
It's just that there's been 5 years of that now, so like, how much more? When do you get? Is it year 6, year 7, year 8? Like, what's the tipping point where you go, okay, I've learned enough now? Like, and also, you're coaching in wherever it is. There's like travel, logistics, short training session, limited contact hours. You could actually be spending that time reading, going to watch another club train, watch another club train, watch another club train, speak with all the international managers, international coaches. It depends on what your role was. Obviously, you know, if you're working for France, you're not going to be hanging out with the IRFU. But if you're working for the French national team, you can then legitimately call in on any of those French coaches. And it seems like most coaches, certainly from talking to Stuart Lancaster, that everybody's actually happy enough to share stuff because you're going to see the stuff on video anyway. We may as well explain what our thinking behind it is and what have you got to give me. So, I don't know, it's like, it'll be interesting to see what happens next, and interesting to see where Paul O'Connell lands in all this too, given that it seems from what the French media were reporting that he is suddenly available at the end of the season to join up a coaching ticket too. So perhaps you do the World Cup, you come back, you get a job in France, and you've got a ready-made team behind you, because you know you've been around the world now at this point and seen the best coaching in New Zealand, the best coaching in Ireland, the best coaching in France. Suddenly you've got a pretty good contacts book.
5 years down the line, where are all the major players in Irish rugby? Where is Ronan O'Gara? Where is Paul O'Connell? Where is Andy Farrell? Where is Jerry Flannery?
After the next World Cup.
After the next World Cup.
After the 2023
World Cup. Look into your crystal ball. You called Wales to win the Grand Slam. Tell us where the Irish coaching figures are going to be.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on the World Cup. If we get past the quarter-final stage, that's success. So, because that's our traditional barrier. And if Andy Farrell reaches a semi-final or a final and wants to keep the job, he keeps the job. Assuming he's still there, right? Let's just assume that he's still there. So after that, I don't know.
Is there a chance of a Paul O'Connell, Ronan O'Gara dream team at Munster down the line?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's a good chance that it happens somewhere else first. That they, you know, because you really only get one chance in your own. You can't go there and not be ready for it. I mean, you can, but you need to be pretty lucky with a bunch of different things that happen your way. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised if that happens somewhere in France first, and that makes the most sense. And then at some point, somebody comes and says, "Okay, lads, it's Munster or Ireland now. Your time is ready." But like that, given that the IRFU have put their plans in place for the next World Cup cycle, that's not going to happen in the national team in the next 4 years.
Imagine how beloved it would be, like Munster fans looking up to the big screen and the camera pans to the box, and it's Rog and Paul O'Connell, probably Felix Jones and Jerry Flannery as well with their headsets on, figuring out what to do on the pitch. They'll probably be the most loved management team in sport anywhere for a period of, like, results dependent.
That's it, right? You get like 4 weeks and then they're like, hang on a second, this needs to be a winning team now.
That honeymoon period would be pretty sweet though.
Yeah, it'd be great. Assuming that, I mean, I think they could probably be successful.
Of course, I totally invented that, but I kind of like this different world that we created.
And where's that job?
Munster.
Not Ireland. Not Ireland.
Well, that's I hadn't even considered that thought. To be honest with you, I hadn't even considered the thought of Paul O'Connell and Ronan O'Gara coaching together until 2 minutes ago. So
really, it's been in the ether for
as Munster.
All right, okay. But like they've been talking about it for ages. Queenie's always talking about it.
Has he? Has he been on the record and said the two of them should take over at Munster?
At some point, yeah. They're
I just obviously wasn't listening that day.
They've been talking about it as well themselves. Like, oh yeah, you know, doesn't matter, the job title says job. Remember that whole job title says job title thing?
Yeah.
That was about them working together.
Right, okay. I clearly misinterpreted that, or just didn't listen to it, clearly.
We have Limerick against Waterford to look for today's National Hurling League final. James O'Connor joined the show last night and admitted that he's a bit worried about what he's seen from Galway so far this year.
There were worrying signs for me about Galway that sometimes, if Canning isn't doing it, they appear in a way kind of rudderless or leaderless, and guys are still prone to making, poor decisions on the ball. Niall Burke again at some, just bad decisions has said that, wrong options been taken. And, for all their qualities, there's still an element of that at times about Galway that just baffles you, that you wonder, how are they in this position? For a team with the experience they have, most of these guys have a lot of medals in their back pockets. Now obviously the goal, Joe, was a key moment in the game, and against Wexford, they obviously coughed up again a couple of really cheap goals that they could have paid a very, very heavy price for against the wind in Salthill. And again, you have to take into account that, okay, Fergal Flannery, is playing. It isn't Dahi Burke that's standing outside him, Ronan Burke, that they don't maybe have that same level of understanding. And it was a dreadful goal to give away, in the circumstances, and one that you couldn't be happy about. So that certainly gave Watford hope and gave them a foothold in the game. But still, the position Galway were in with the win to come, they shouldn't have lost that game. And somehow this morning they're waking up, wondering why. And that for me, is troubling.
Yeah, because when you consider that the whole thing about Galway being a one-man team was supposed to be put to bed a couple of years ago, it's not that they're a one-man team, it's that he is such a sensational player that so much revolves around him, and he's been so instrumental in their league campaign this year. He wanted to play every game to get to the point where he was going to be fully match fit and firing all cylinders, and he has been absolutely brilliant in the league. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how long he's out with this groin injury that they're reporting he suffered at the weekend, even though it didn't really look like a groin injury, and just exactly what the game plan is for when Canning isn't around. Yeah,
they're very lucky that way. I think, to be fair, in hindsight, the stretcher was actually a good sign from Galway's perspective. Like, if it was actually a shoulder or a back injury or whatever it may have been, they probably wouldn't have needed the stretcher. So in hindsight, that stretcher coming out kind of confirmed that it wasn't actually an injury in that area. Whatever happened, he must have just jerked his leg or something like that in the tackle. And they're very, very lucky that he's got out of that in decent enough shape.
That news that Josh van der Fleer is out for 12 weeks on the back of groin surgery, though, it looks so innocuous. He got his leg pulled and then kind of stands up and tries to run it off. But that's not great news for anybody who's trying to play their way into the most competitive area of the team for the World Cup. So 12 weeks, it's getting on there to the point where you're like, uh-oh, am I going to have time to prove my fitness?
Yeah, that's what started July. Middle of July, that's...
frequently they overestimate the length of time of these things. You hope that they have done, and that's like a very conservative worst case scenario. But if there's surgery involved, and if it doesn't knit together properly, then suddenly our strength and depth in the area is not really as pronounced as we thought it was.
And certainly in the short term, that seems to be his season over. So Leinster's hopes of kind of going into the business end of this Champions Cup, Heineken Champions Cup, with a huge amount of depth. Well, we already know that 12 months down the line, because of last year's success, the depth just isn't there again this year, because players got picked off and sent elsewhere, obviously. So another kind of worrying aspect for them. They'll have to win it a lot harder than they did last year, you'd imagine, in a lot more difficult way, I should say.
Far more impressive to be able to back it up this year with the diminished resources they have. A reminder again, there is live football happening tonight. It's the Republic of Ireland against Georgia. It's live across Off the Ball from 7 o'clock. Nathan Murphy, former Irish international, Stephen Ward are on commentary. You can listen live on the radio, offtheball.com or youtube.com/Off the Ball. Here's Gary Breen saying why he doesn't think we should give up just yet on playing our two best right-sided players in the team on the right side, where, maybe more than 60 minutes might be required for us to decide whether or not it's a success or failure. Have a look.
I didn't think it did work particularly well, but I don't think that's something we should just throw out the window now. I think it can work well. But I think ultimately the problem you had is that, say for someone like Doherty, he's used to operating all down that flank for Wolves in his own space. He's never going to get anyone underlapping him, overlapping him. And obviously our captain, that's his strength, bombing on. But I think too often in doing so, he actually blocked the areas that Matt Doherty wants to play in. And if you think about the way that Doherty has excelled in the Premier League this year, more often than not, he gets the ball, He looked to play into his centre forward, pass and follow. The centre forward look after the ball, or he certainly got a pass into his advanced midfielder. And at times, not only Seamus Coleman was running in and blocking that, but Maguire didn't hold the ball up well enough for international football. McGoldrick at times at 10 was too deep, certainly in that first half. So I think there's a combination of why, and certainly a reason why he didn't perform as well as he's done. The caveat to that as well is that no matter how much we work on it, it's not going to look as fluid as it does for Wolves because of the system, because of the fact that Nuno has worked with them for 2 years now, day in, day out on the training field. I don't think, and Mick said, listen, it is still a very different role, but I still think there is a place for both of them in the team on that right side.
He's right.
I think so too.
He's certainly right in the idea that we should try it one more time. And
it didn't sound like that was going to happen, though.
No, it's an unusual one, isn't it? Like, Mick McCarthy's actually been quite transparent in his quotes over the past couple of weeks in terms of who's going to start and who's not going to start. Like, we could see from a mile off last week that Robbie Brady was not going to be involved in the starting 11 on Saturday. And it seems from the quotes that you've been reading this morning that he's been saying the same thing about Matt Doherty, at least in that position. So it turned out to be the truth last week. There's every chance it turns out to be the truth again tonight.
What about this protest? People are getting in touch with us saying that nobody in any of the fans groups have heard anything about a tennis ball protest.
Where did that come from then?
I don't know.
Very, very unusual. Like, is there going to be confiscation of tennis balls at the gate?
Well, who's bringing a tennis ball?
Like, is there a cohort of people who all bring 2 each or something? They all sit together and therefore they look like a deluge of tennis balls as they all throw out at one time?
Yeah, that's the... I mean, so this comes from German football, right? It's like generally to protest ticket prices or something like that, and they bring tennis balls because they're the easiest thing in the world to smuggle in. But where did it come from?
I'm actually not sure. Like, what sort of... Will that be the straw that breaks the camel's back? Will that be the moment that John Delaney looks down and says, my race is run here?
No, I don't think there's going to be a tennis ball protest. I think that, like, it doesn't make any sense, right?
No, it doesn't make any sense in the idea that it's actually going to have a material impact, or it doesn't make any sense in the fact that...
Ireland fans don't protest in that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Ireland fans protest with flags and they protest with songs. Like, we haven't seen it happen before.
No, yeah.
Maybe they're like watching European football and going, that's a really good idea, it's a really good way for us to protest, but you would see somewhere in the ether that this is happening, and where it's coming from, it would be on forums, there would have been discussions about it, like, should we do this, yes or no, a groundswell of support, but that hasn't happened.
No, it's unusual to kind of put your finger on who actually is the instigator behind this. And when you say the instigator behind this, you're actually talking about a rumour. You're not actually talking about something that's guaranteed to happen. So I'll be very intrigued to see if anything does kind of materialise from this. I do think, though, most people who are actually there at the stadium tonight will be fairly glued to what's happening on the pitch, because if Ireland come away with 6 points from these opening 2 games, granted that was the minimum expectation at the outset of the campaign, I think given the performance on Saturday night, the fans will be largely satisfied with that. Like, will the John Delaney thing become a significant sideshow tonight? I'd have my doubts, to be honest with you. I think there will be flags. The idea of...
The flags will be confiscated the way they always are.
Like, the suggestion that flags have been confiscated in the past, confiscated always seems to make a bit more of a bigger story than the flags themselves, don't they?
I don't know. I mean, I think that...
Unless there's like thousands of them.
The tennis ball protest was first reported in the Times Ireland yesterday, but none of the groups behind previous protests, according to Dan anyway, said that they knew anything about it. So,
yeah, I don't know. How would you smuggle in tennis balls?
Well, they don't search you, really. I mean, down your pants, obviously, is the obvious place.
Yeah.
Like,
how many could you get in?
Where most people, well, depends on the size of your shorts.
It certainly does. Cold night for shorts.
If you're wearing tiny whities, it's not going to be much room for that, is there?
No. No protest for you, tiny whities guy.
Right, the Shot Clock with Kieran Donaghy is on every Thursday morning here on OTB AM. It's where myself and Kieran go head to head and talk about 6 or 7 of the main issues over the course of the week. We try and bring in a 5-minute interview with somebody as well to get a flavour of what's going on. I suspect this week we might end up talking a bit about basketball and the amazing success of the Garvey's Tralee Warriors. That's the right order of that?
Yes.
It is the type of thing where somebody like Donaghy can bring attention to an entire sport by sheer force of personality?
Yeah, but sheer force of personality for sure. That's helped kind of create the aura around him and around the team. But also, at the very foundation of all of this is just pure perspiration and an absolute determination to make everything work and make this team and this organisation the best it possibly can be. Like speaking on this show yesterday morning, talking about going to meetings over the course of the weekend to make sure all the logistics are in order for the week. To create that sort of hype needs a little bit of planning as well to ensure that the aura that is around you is maximised to the best of itself, and that seems to have been the case. And it's a town that's gone absolutely crazy for basketball over the past couple of years, and it's only going in one direction as well.
Here's an idea of how last week's Shot Clock went. Have a look.
I don't know how much they lack superstars, but you know, two guys that should be kind of in this team aren't in the team, and Rory O'Carroll and Diarmuid Connolly are both. For me, Rory O'Carroll is right now is kind of the guy that I'd be looking to get in.
So JJ Watt is getting paid about $5 million less than players who are nowhere near as good as him on an annualised basis because he didn't hit free agency, he didn't hold out, he didn't say I'm going to wait and get my money. Can I ask you about the Kerry fans giving it to you in the neck? Did that help you to get better? That's my theory about the Kerry fans, by being so demanding, by demanding off you guys that they're the Real Madrid of the Irish football world, and that actually drives your team on to success.
Well, we wanted it for ourselves. We wanted to win in All-Ireland. We weren't training for that league since November to put on a show like that. Jesus, to watch Corofin the last day, their movement, they're so unselfish. Like if you want a team, if you want a team to try and win something, you show them Corofin the last day about how unselfish you can be in front of goal on the big day in Croke Park, where club fellas can kind of say, "Geez, if I get a goal and a few points here, they'll be talking about me forevermore in the parish." Not a touch of it.
Everything that we're talking about over the last number of weeks in terms of the 20 by 20 campaign, this is it set back miles and miles back, and the AFL have to take some responsibility for this. Leave the photograph up, let everybody see that there are clowns out there, and let's expose those clowns, and let's continue to celebrate greatness wherever we see it, whoever is delivering it.
I met one of Kieran's friends out in Dubai at the Irish Open this year, and he was a small bit upset, and he came up to me kind of saying that you know, that he'd got the news that Kieran had got it back for the third time, and you know, I could tell he was visibly shaken by it. And you know, this is a great Cork footballer. I battled him, never really came across him too much. He was kind of more busy running around, hanging off of Gooch and Declan Sullivan. But like, you know, just a warrior for Cork.
Yeah, Shot Clock, one of my favourite parts of the week. It's coming your way on Thursday mornings, OTB AM. You can get all that good stuff on YouTube as well. Just head over to youtube.com/offtheball. Final reminder, there are a limited amount of tickets available for our roadshow in association with the Heineken Rugby Club coming up on Wednesday night. It's at the Olympia Theatre. Head over to offtheball.com/events. Stephen Ferris, Keith Wood, Malcolm O'Kelly, Shane Jennings, and our special guest all the way from Australia, it's Michael Cheika. This morning's winner of VIP tickets to the show is also going to be there, so congratulations to Veronica Fitzgerald. Well done, Veronica. We'll be in touch with details tonight on Off the Ball, live commentary of the Republic of Ireland against Georgia. Stephen Ward alongside Nathan in the commentary booth. Plenty of analysis, reaction and blow-by-blow account of whether or not there are any protests about John Delaney's now new tenure as the Executive Vice President of the FAI. That's pretty much all we've got time for on this morning show. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us, you can drop us a comment wherever you're watching these streams, or of course you can just use the hashtag OTBAM. We'll see you tomorrow morning with all of the analysis and reaction to the Republic of Ireland against Georgia. Good luck.